My name is Cleopatra Miller. I'm 30 years old, and what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you believe about family loyalty. 8 months ago, my parents threw my sister Helena and her newborn twins out into a freezing Seattle storm, all because she got divorced. They saw her failed marriage as an unforgivable stain on the Miller family's perfect Christian image. When I found out they'd literally slammed the door in her face while she stood there holding two crying infants in the pouring rain, I drove 3 hours through that same storm to reach her. But what I discovered when I arrived made even me tremble with rage. The twins, Hazel and Ivy, were burning with fever. Helena was delirious from exhaustion. They'd been living in her car for 3 days because my parents had called every relative, warning them not to take her in. Before I tell you how I exposed their cruelty at my mother's 61st birthday gala, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly resonates with you. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Because this is how I learned that sometimes the family failure is the one who holds all the power. Growing up as the youngest Miller child meant living permanently in someone else's shadow. My brother Marcus, 10 years older, was everything my parents worshipped. A top lawyer at Langford and Associates, a luxury house in Bellevue, a wife who looked like she belonged in a campaign photo, and the ability to quote scripture while crushing opponents in court. My sister Helena, 4 years older than me, used to be their golden child too. Married young, gave them twin granddaughters, hosted holiday dinners like a pastor's wife straight from a magazine spread. Then there was me. Single, working as an IT project manager at Eclipse Technologies, renting a one-bedroom apartment in Queen Anne with my rescue cat, Pixel. Every Sunday dinner was the same performance. Mom sighing dramatically, Dad grunting agreement, and Marcus smirking over his wineglass. "Cleopatra, when are you going to settle down?" Mom would start, her voice sweet but cutting. "Even Helena gave us grandchildren by your age." Dad would nod, chewing slowly, while Marcus added, "Mom knows a few guys from church. Maybe one could fix your single problem." The irony was suffocating. While they criticized me for being unmarried, Helena was hiding a secret that would soon explode. She'd been calling me late at night, whispering through tears so the babies wouldn't wake. Her husband, Ethan Gray, the perfect son-in-law, at least on paper, had been cheating since she was 6 months pregnant. She finally filed for divorce 2 weeks after giving birth, but was terrified to tell our parents. "Please don't say anything yet," she begged me over the phone. "I need time to explain without them losing their minds." I promised to keep her secret. I didn't know that within days, that secret would cost her everything: her home, her safety, and nearly her daughters' lives. The night it all collapsed began with a phone call from Aunt Clara Bennett, my mother's older sister and self-appointed family messenger. She'd spotted Ethan Gray downtown at a bar, laughing with a woman who wasn't his wife, his wedding ring hanging from a chain around the woman's neck like a trophy. Within minutes, she called my mother Eleanor, and what followed was a storm louder than the one rolling over Seattle. Mom called Helena at 11 p.m., her voice so sharp I could hear every word through Helena's speakerphone. "You're divorced? You hid this from us? You've disgraced our family before God." Helena tried to explain, about Ethan's affair, about protecting the babies, but Mom wasn't listening. Then Dad took the phone. Richard Miller's voice was like cold iron. "No daughter of mine gets divorced," he said. "You made vows before God." Helena's sobs cracked the air. "He cheated on me. He abandoned us." Dad didn't flinch. "Then you should have kept him satisfied. A good wife fights for her marriage." I could hear every word while holding one of the twins in my arms. Then Marcus joined the call, calm, controlled, and cruel. "Helena, you've destroyed our family's reputation," he said smoothly. "You know how this looks for the Millers. We don't do divorce." When she begged him to stop, he cut her off. "I have friends at Child Protective Services. If you make this messy, I'll make sure those twins end up in better homes." My blood ran cold. I quietly tapped record on my phone. Something told me I'd need proof. Helena could barely speak. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," Marcus replied. "You're an unemployed single mother living off savings. I'm a respected attorney with a perfect record. Who do you think the court will believe?" Mom's voice returned, final and merciless. "You have 1 hour to pack and leave. Don't come back until you fix this shame." Lightning flashed outside Helena's apartment as she collapsed onto the couch, clutching her daughters. Within minutes, messages poured in from cousins and church friends repeating Mom's decree: "You're not welcome here." Dad's contacts spread faster than any storm alert. My own phone buzzed. Mom warning me not to take Helena's side, and Marcus reminding me that Dad played golf with my company's CEO every Saturday. Their meaning was clear: help her and lose everything. I stared at Helena, shaking, crying, stuffing baby clothes into a plastic bag while rain hammered the windows, and something inside me cracked. The house I grew up in suddenly felt like a stranger's home. Family isn't blood, it's who shows up when the storm hits. The storm hit Seattle like judgment. I'd barely changed out of my work clothes when my phone rang, Helena's name flashing on the screen, her voice nearly drowned out by wind and rain. "Cleo, please," she gasped. "I didn't know where else to go." I could hear the twins crying in the background, their tiny wails slicing through the static. "They're burning up. Hazel can't stop shaking." My blood turned to ice. "Where are you?" I asked. "Target lot, Route 7 bridge," she said. "I tried the ER, but Ethan canceled the insurance. They wouldn't treat us without payment." There was a long pause, broken by the sound of thunder. Mom blocked my number. Dad said I made my bed and should lie in it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. For years I'd obeyed, stayed quiet, believed that compliance kept the peace. But as I listened to my sister sob while holding 2 sick infants in a freezing car, peace suddenly felt like cowardice. I grabbed my keys and jacket, ignoring the texts still lighting up my phone. Mom's orders, Marcus's threats. None of it mattered now. The wipers struggled against sheets of rain as I drove toward Route 7. Every flash of lightning felt like revelation. I kept hearing Dad's voice in my head, reciting scripture about obedience, and Mom's favorite line: "A good daughter honors her parents." But all I could think of was Helena alone in that parking lot, praying for mercy from people who had none. By the time I reached the bridge, the wind howled so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. Then I saw it, the silver sedan, lights dim, engine off. I pulled beside her and ran through ankle-deep water, rain slashing my face like glass. Helena sat in the back seat, clutching Hazel and Ivy to her chest beneath a soaked blanket. Her face was pale, lips trembling. "They have fevers," she whispered. I didn't know what else to do. For a heartbeat, I saw us as children, kneeling on the carpet while Mom made us pray for humility, Dad standing behind her like a judge. We were raised to mistake fear for faith, silence for love. But seeing Helena now, shaking under the storm, I finally understood what real faith looked like, protecting someone when no one else will. I opened the door and said quietly, "Get in my car." She hesitated. "You'll lose everything if they find out." "Then let me lose it," I said. "They've already taken enough." I started recording on my phone, not her face, but the scene, the timestamp, the rain, the crying babies. 2 infants abandoned by their grandparents who preached family values every Sunday. We drove through flooded streets in silence, the twins' shallow breathing filling the dark. At the ER, nurses rushed forward when they saw their condition. IV fluids, oxygen, warm blankets, organized chaos under white light. As dawn crept over Seattle, the babies were stable, and Helena finally slept in a chair beside them. Standing in that hallway, I stared at the flickering fluorescent bulb and felt something shift. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of losing my parents' approval. I was afraid of becoming like them. And that fear became my courage. I whispered to myself, "It ends with me." By the time the monitors steadied and the twins' breathing evened out, the adrenaline had drained from my body, leaving only a clean, vibrating anger. I stepped into the hallway to call my mother. She picked up on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting to prove she was right. "Where are you?" Eleanor demanded. "At the ER," I said. Hazel and Ivy were dehydrated, burning up. Helena almost fainted. There was a pause. Then that church lady calm she used when she wanted to sound merciful while twisting the knife. "That's not your concern." "They're my nieces," I replied. "They're the consequence of a broken vow," she said. "You involve yourself, and you share her disgrace." I heard my father's baritone slide onto speaker. "Helena brought this on herself. She disobeyed God, disobeyed me." I gripped the phone. "You left your daughter in a parking lot during a storm." "Watch your tone," Richard snapped. "You have 48 hours to decide where your loyalty lies, with that woman and her bastards, or with your family." The word family landed like acid. "For me, they are family," I said. Silence. Then another click as Marcus joined. His voice was silk-lined steel. "Cleo, you're emotional. We can fix this quietly if you cooperate. But if you make it messy, I'll have Child Protective Services involved tomorrow." An unemployed single mother, unstable after divorce. Courts eat that up. Those girls need proper homes. My stomach turned. "You mean homes that look good on Christmas cards?" He chuckled. "Courts love stability. And you love yours, don't you? Dad golfs with your CEO every Saturday. Your lease? Through one of his old Air Force buddies. One text, and you're jobless and homeless." For a second, the old fear flickered, the instinct to apologize, to make them comfortable again. Then I looked through the glass at Hazel and Ivy, their tiny chests rising beneath hospital blankets, and the fear dissolved. I had already chosen the moment Helena called my name through the static. "Send your texts," I said. "I'm finished obeying bullies who hide behind Bible verses." Marcus's tone iced over. 48 hours, Cleo. After that, you're out too. No job, no apartment, no family." The line went dead. I lowered the phone, the fluorescent light buzzing above me like a warning that never stopped. For the first time, I understood the exact shape of their control. Fear dressed as faith. Obedience sold as love. I'd spent 30 years mistaking quiet for peace. Now the quiet felt dangerous. Behind the glass, Hazel's tiny hand twitched, and I felt the pulse of something new. Not rebellion, clarity. Whatever happened next, I wouldn't kneel again. I stood in the hospital hallway long after the call ended, the dial tone still echoing in my ears like an alarm that wouldn't stop. Then I scrolled to the only person I knew who could turn chaos into strategy, Danielle Harris, my friend from college, now one of Seattle's sharpest family lawyers. "Bring your recorder," I said, "and coffee." She arrived before sunrise, trench coat soaked, hair in a bun, holding 2 cups and a legal pad. "Play me everything," she said before sitting down. I handed her my phone. The recordings of Marcus's threats, my father's ultimatum, my mother's sanctimonious cruelty. The air in the waiting area thickened as their voices filled the small space. "You have 48 hours. Those girls belong in proper homes." Danielle scribbled notes faster than I could talk. "They just admitted to custodial interference and coercion on record," she said. "If he actually contacts CPS, that's retaliation, possibly criminal." I showed her the video from Target Lot, Route 7 Bridge. The timestamp glowed through the rain. Danielle's eyes darkened as she watched Helena rocking the twins in the car, using her coat as a blanket. "Good God," she murmured. "That's your parents' house 10 minutes away, right?" I nodded. She snapped a pen open. "We're filing emergency guardianship for you today. Abandonment under severe weather, documented health endangerment for minors, and recorded threats. A judge will sign that immediately." She started typing. "If we move fast, Helena's protected before they can make another move." She paused, her gaze flicking up to me. "We can also hit Marcus where it hurts, his reputation." Her fingers danced over the keyboard. "Marcus Miller Jr., Langford and Associates. Oh, this is interesting. There's a sealed case from 2 years ago." She turned the screen toward me. "Sexual harassment. Settled privately." I blinked. He paid someone off? Danielle nodded. $75,000 labeled as a consulting retainer, standard hush money figure. The timing matches the complaint's closure. I felt a wave of nausea. Does his firm know? They buried it, Danielle said. But the paralegal who processed it is a friend of mine. She kept copies. She reached for her phone. If she's willing to testify, we can reopen it. My hands shook, not from fear but clarity. My brother wasn't just cruel, he was corrupt. The same man who threatened to take my nieces away had paid to silence a woman he harassed. Every thread of moral superiority he'd wrapped himself in was about to unravel. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your parents turned your sister away at 11:47 p.m. I have security footage. Let me know if you need it. A neighbor. Proof. I handed it to Danielle, who grinned like a woman who'd just been handed the final piece of a puzzle. Perfect. Outside angle. Combine that with your father's voice on the recording and the footage you took. It's airtight. She shut her laptop with a quiet click. Now, Cleo, you said your mom's 61st birthday is this weekend? I nodded slowly. Saturday. They booked the Langford Grand Hall. Church board, Dad's partners, donors, the works. Danielle leaned back, tapping her pen against the table. Public humiliation disguised as celebration, she said. They'll have microphones, projectors, and champagne. Let's give them a presentation they'll never forget. By afternoon, the twins were asleep, pink-cheeked and warm under hospital blankets. Helena sat beside them, sipping lukewarm coffee, whispering, "I'm sorry," between breaths, as if every apology could erase years of submission. "Stop," I said gently. "They taught us to apologize for existing." She looked at me, eyes swollen and tired, and I saw the echo of every woman in our family who'd been silenced in the name of faith. For the first time, I realized how deep the inheritance of obedience ran, and how simple rebellion could be. Just refusing to bow. Danielle Harris came back later with a folder so thick it looked like a verdict. "The guardianship petition is ready," she said, sliding papers across the table. "You'll be the temporary custodian of Hazel and Ivy until further notice." I stared at my name on the document. Cleopatra Miller, guardian. The words hummed with weight. Danielle wasn't done. "I also sent a preemptive notice to your company's HR. If your family retaliates through your father's connections, it's protected under the whistleblower clause. They touch your job, they lose their license." She smiled faintly. "Oh, and I called Dr. Margot Hayes at Nova Edge Solutions. She's looking for remote project managers. Helena fits perfectly. She can work from home while the twins recover." Helena's hand flew to her mouth. "You did all that today?" Danielle shrugged. "You said your family moves fast. I move faster." For the first time in days, Helena laughed, small, disbelieving, but real. I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard that sound. My phone buzzed again. "Marcus. Got the invitation? Come alone. Don't embarrass us. If anyone asks about Helena, say she's traveling." I stared at the message for a long second, then typed, "I'll be there. And yes, I'll have news." His reply came instantly. "Good girl." Those two words had haunted me since childhood, praise disguised as ownership. But this time, they didn't sting. They crystallized something inside me. I forwarded the text to Danielle. She glanced at it, smirked. "He just gave you the opening." She grabbed her laptop and began outlining a plan. "The Langford Grand Hall is fully equipped. LED display wall, Bluetooth projection. If your father's phone has remote access to his security cameras, we can stream it straight from his account when the time comes. Public confession, courtesy of the sinner." I couldn't help a dark laugh. "You've done this before." "Let's just say hypocrisy makes great theater," she said. "We'll cue it with the presentation system. You act normal, read your lines, and when the toast starts, I'll handle the switch." That evening, a courier arrived at the hospital with a thick cream envelope embossed with gold. Eleanor Miller's 61st birthday gala. The Langford Grand Hall. Saturday, 7 p.m. Inside, a handwritten note. Cleo, we trust you'll make the right decision by Saturday. Love, Mom. I handed it to Danielle. She read it once and exhaled through her teeth. There's the bait. I looked out the window at the city lights reflecting off the sound. Everything shimmered, fragile and false. They think I'll show up to prove loyalty, I said quietly. You will, Danielle replied. Just not the kind they expect. Helena squeezed my hand. You sure about this? For the first time in my life, I said. Yes. I folded the invitation back into its envelope and felt something shift. Not revenge, but resolve. For 30 years, I'd been performing in their theater, following their script. In 2 days, I'd write my own. And when the curtain rose, the truth would take center stage. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of paperwork, exhaustion, and quiet plotting. Danielle Harris transformed my apartment into a war room. Laptops open, sticky notes lining the wall, the faint hum of the printer stitching our plan together. We need control, not chaos, she said, eyes fixed on her screen. If you walk into the Langford Grand Hall angry, they'll win. You walk in calm, polite, composed, then let the truth do the screaming. I stared at the reflection of Seattle's skyline in my window. The Space Needle glowed faintly in the rain, like a lighthouse for the lost. They think I'm still afraid of them, I said. Danielle didn't look up. Then let them. We rehearsed the timing like choreography. I'd arrive 10 minutes early, accept the hugs, the fake smiles, the questions about my career. Marcus would be near the podium, rehearsing his introduction speech for Mom. Danielle's role was offstage but crucial. She'd monitor the feed from her car, ready to trigger the mirrored projection from Richard Miller's cloud account. The moment Marcus raised his glass to toast Eleanor, the video from Target Lot, Route 7 Bridge would play. Helena's voice begging for help, the rain hammering the windshield, the timestamp glinting like a verdict. Then the security footage would cut in, my father's voice telling my mother, let her freeze, she made her choice. Every person in that ballroom, partners, donors, the pastor, would hear it. But even with the plan laid out, the silence between tasks was heavy. I'd never thought of revenge as quiet, but that's what it felt like. Steady, deliberate, almost sacred. Danielle looked up from her notes. You okay? She asked. I nodded, though my chest ached. It's strange, I said. I used to pray for my parents to see me, to be proud of me. Now I just want them to see what they've become. Danielle handed me a stack of envelopes, subpoenas, custody filings, copies of sealed complaints. They will, she said, and so will everyone else. That night, after Helena and the twins were discharged, we moved them into my apartment. Hazel's soft breathing filled the small space, and for the first time, the apartment didn't feel empty. Helena tucked a blanket around the girls and whispered, Cleo, you don't have to do this for me. I looked at her, exhausted, but certain. I'm not doing it for you, I said quietly. I'm doing it because we both deserve to stop being afraid. She reached for my hand and held it. Outside, thunder rolled again, but this time, I didn't flinch. The storm had already passed through me. If you believe that truth can't stay buried forever, hit like to stand with Cleopatra. And tell me in the comments, what moment in this story hit you the hardest? Because sometimes, sharing your truth is the first step toward your own justice. Now then, let's go back to that night of the party. The fateful night that changed everything. The Langford Grand Hall gleamed like a cathedral built for vanity. Crystal chandeliers dripped gold light onto polished marble floors, and every corner smelled faintly of roses and money. Guests in sequined gowns floated through the room like glittering ghosts, their laughter echoing off glass and pride. When I walked in, heads turned, not because of who I was, but because I was the one they didn't expect to see. Eleanor Miller stood near the stage, radiant in champagne silk, her smile as practiced as a politician's. She greeted me with air kisses and whispered, "I'm glad you came, darling. Remember, tonight is about grace, not grudges." Behind her, Richard adjusted his tie, giving me the kind of nod reserved for employees, not daughters. Marcus appeared next, tuxedo crisp, confidence sharp enough to cut. "You look presentable," he said. "Let's make sure you stay that way." His wife Veronica lingered behind him, eyes darting toward the camera flashes. I forced a smile. "Don't worry, I know my lines." He smirked. "Good. Mom's speech is after mine. Try not to interrupt." He walked away, perfectly composed, unaware that the floor beneath him was already wired with truth. I found my seat at a corner table beside Reverend John Holloway and his wife. They spoke about the importance of forgiveness, and I wondered how it felt to preach grace with blinders on. Across the room, Edward and Dr. Margot Hayes had arrived, Danielle's quiet allies. She texted me from the parking lot. "Feed connected, audio synced. Say the word when the toast begins." My heart pounded once, then steadied. The music swelled, and servers glided between tables carrying champagne like liquid light. Marcus stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, every inch the golden sun. "Tonight, we celebrate not only my mother's 61st birthday," he said, "but the values she and my father built our family on: faith, unity, and honor." I felt the words slice through me, clean and hollow. Honor. The same word my father had used to justify cruelty. The same word my mother weaponized to measure love. Danielle's next text flashed across my phone. "When he raises his glass, it starts." I slid the phone under my clutch and drew a slow breath. Around me, guests smiled, cameras ready, unaware they were minutes away from watching the gospel of perfection turn into its own confession. When Marcus called my name, "And my beautiful sister Cleopatra, who stands by family no matter what," the irony almost made me laugh. I stood, nodded, and met my parents' eyes. For the first time in 30 years, I didn't look away. The fear that had once owned me was gone. I had rehearsed silence my whole life. Tonight, I would finally let the truth speak. The ballroom shimmered under 1,000 lights as Marcus lifted his glass. Cameras clicked. Guests leaned forward, expectant, the air trembling with champagne and performance. "To family," he said, smiling toward my parents. "The foundation of everything we are." The crowd echoed softly, "To family," like a prayer recited without meaning. I could feel Danielle's message vibrate in my clutch. Now. The first second after the toast felt eternal. Then the lights dimmed just enough for the LED wall to wake. At first the crowd thought it was part of the slideshow, soft rain sounds, a car interior glowing blue. Then the audio came in, Helena's voice, trembling. "Please, Mom, it's cold. The babies are crying." The room froze. My mother's glass halted midair. The camera feed flickered, switching angles. Richard's voice filled the hall, booming from the speakers he'd paid for. "Let her freeze. She made her choice." A collective gasp sliced through the room. Someone dropped their glass. The video continued. Helena in the car, rain hammering, my own voice whispering, "We're going to the hospital." The timestamp shone. 11:47 p.m. Followed by footage from my parents' home security camera. Eleanor sitting on the living room sofa, her phone lighting her face as Helena's call flashes on screen. She stares at it for a second, then presses decline. Outside the window behind her, lightning flashes, turning her reflection into a portrait of indifference. The silence that followed was merciless. Eleanor's face drained of color. Richard stood rigid, hands clenching his champagne flute. Marcus lunged for the AV table, shouting, "Turn it off!" But Danielle had locked the feed remotely, the same app my father had bragged about using to control the house from anywhere. The footage looped once more, slower this time, the words "Let her freeze" echoing over the soft piano music. Every guest's face turned toward the Millers, disbelief curdling into disgust. I stepped forward. My hands were steady. my voice quiet but clear. This, I said, is what family meant to them. My father shouted my name, but his voice was small against the roar of truth. They called it faith. They called it discipline. But what it really was cruelty. For years, I had imagined what it would feel like to finally confront them, to watch their power collapse under its own hypocrisy. But standing there, I didn't feel triumph. Only release, like breathing after holding my breath for decades. Cameras kept flashing. Reporters from local press, invited by Marcus himself, were already filming. Eleanor reached for me, whispering, "Cleo, stop this." I met her eyes. "I did," I said, "the moment you declined her call." And with that, the lights came back on. And the illusion of the Miller family shattered for good. The silence after the video ended was more violent than any noise. For a moment, no one moved. Then whispers rippled across the ballroom like aftershocks. One person gasped, another cursed under their breath, a reporter raised their phone. The illusion cracked audibly. My father, Richard Miller, tried to steady his voice. This is taken out of context," he stammered, but the words collided in his throat. Eleanor looked around as if searching for a script that could fix the scene. "It's a misunderstanding," she said faintly. "Helena, she exaggerates." "Really?" someone near the front table called out. Dr. Margot Hayes, her tone surgical. "Because I just heard you decline your daughter's call while she begged for help." Cameras turned toward her, recording every word. Reverend Holloway, who had been sitting a few tables away, stood awkwardly. "Perhaps we can pray." But the guests weren't praying anymore. They were judging. Marcus's composure shattered next. He stormed toward me, jaw clenched. "You had no right," he hissed. "You've humiliated this family." I met his fury with stillness. "No, Marcus," I said quietly. "I revealed what humiliation looks like when it's dressed as tradition." His face reddened. "You think you've won? You've destroyed Mom. You've destroyed Dad." "I didn't destroy them," I said. "They built this themselves, brick by brick, lie by lie." Flashes went off again. Edward Hayes, the senior partner of Langford and Associates, had appeared near the stage, face grave. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Marcus and I could hear. "Marcus, we'll talk Monday," he said coldly. "HR already reopened your file. The complaint resurfaced." Marcus froze. "What?" Edward nodded toward me, almost respectful. "It's a shame. You could have been brilliant if you'd learned decency." Then he turned and walked away. Danielle had done exactly what she promised. Truth dressed for a ballroom. My father lunged toward the microphone, grabbing it from its stand. "This is my house," he barked, forgetting that the Langford Grand Hall didn't belong to him. "My daughter hacked our private files." "That cloud account is registered under your foundation, sir." Danielle's voice came from behind the AV table. She had walked in, calm as a storm with purpose. "Public institution, public access, and according to the Washington Nonprofit Code, so is your annual grant fund." A murmur spread like fire. Donors began checking their phones. Someone whispered, "He used the church foundation for this?" The color drained from my father's face. My mother finally broke. "Cleo," she pleaded, voice shaking. "Please, just stop. You don't understand what you're doing." I stepped closer. "I understand perfectly," I said. "You taught me to honor the truth. I'm honoring it." Her hand trembled as she reached for me, but I didn't move. The cameras caught it. A tableau of regret, exposure, and silence. Across the room, reporters from Seattle Weekly and Channel 9 began surrounding Danielle. Microphones rose. "Ms. Harris, are these files verified?" "Authenticated and time-stamped," Danielle said smoothly. "Filed with the court this morning." Marcus turned on her. "You'll regret this," he spat. Danielle didn't even blink. "No, Mr. Miller," she said. "You will." The band had stopped playing. Guests were leaving in murmurs, some with pity, others with disgust. The Miller name, once spoken like royalty in our small corner of Seattle society, now sounded like a confession. I stood in the center of it all, the champagne glass still trembling in my hand, and realized the strangest thing. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. By the time the last guest left the ballroom, the Miller family name was already trending. Outside, news vans lined the street, their satellite dishes glittering under rain. Reporters shouted questions through the lobby glass. "Mrs. Miller, do you have a response? Mr. Miller, will you step down from the foundation board?" The words, "Let her freeze," echoed from every phone screen in the room like a curse. Security ushered my parents and Marcus into the back corridor, the one reserved for staff and performers. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years we'd been performing. The hallway smelled of champagne and panic. Marcus ripped off his bow tie and threw it against the wall. "You ruined us," he hissed. His voice cracked now, stripped of courtroom confidence. "You think this is justice? This is vengeance." "No," I said quietly. "Justice just looks like vengeance when you've never been held accountable." He laughed bitterly. "You're finished too, Cleo. The firm's lawyers will bury you." Danielle stepped forward from behind me, holding up her phone. "Good luck with that, counselor. I already filed your internal harassment case as supporting evidence. It's now public record." Marcus's jaw slackened. "You can't." "I did." Her tone was calm as glass. "Maybe you'll finally learn what it feels like to be powerless." Eleanor sat down on a catering chair, her sequined gown dull under fluorescent light. She looked small, almost human. "Cleo," she said softly, "we can fix this. Just say you were confused. Say Danielle manipulated you." I stared at her. "You still don't get it," I said. "This isn't about fixing your image. It's about facing what you did." Tears welled in her eyes, smearing her mascara. "You're my daughter." "I am," I said, "and that's why it hurts this much." Richard remained silent until then. When he finally spoke, his voice was gravel. "We built everything for you kids. The name, the respect. You throw it away for what? To embarrass your mother on her birthday?" I met his eyes. "You built it for yourselves. You never once built it for us." He stepped closer, his presence still heavy, but the authority was gone. "You always thought you were better," he sneered. "No," I said, "I just refuse to stay small." Outside, the echo of sirens grew louder. Marcus's phone buzzed non-stop, messages from the firm, donors, the church board. "They're suspending me," he whispered, disbelief turning to panic. "They actually suspended me." Eleanor turned toward me again, desperation flickering. "Cleo, please, call them off. You're destroying this family." I exhaled slowly. "No, Mom. You destroyed it the moment you closed that door on Helena." Danielle's phone chimed again. A text from Edward Hayes. "Firm statement released. Marcus suspended pending investigation. Police contacted for review of harassment file." Danielle showed me the screen. "It's done," she said simply. The three of them sat there, the parents who'd ruled with fear, the brother who'd weaponized power, looking smaller than I'd ever seen. Eleanor's hands trembled in her lap. Richard's jaw clenched, but his eyes were wet. For a long moment no one spoke. The only sound was the click of a camera from the hallway. A reporter had slipped past security, capturing the aftermath, the fall of a dynasty, the truth behind perfection. I turned to Danielle. "Take Helena home," I said. "She shouldn't see this." She nodded and left quietly. I looked back at my parents, two people who had mistaken control for love. "You always wanted the world to see us as blessed," I said. "Now they finally do, just not the way you imagined." Then I walked out, leaving them in the bright, sterile light of their own undoing. The next morning, Seattle woke up to our family's name plastered across every headline. The Miller Gala Meltdown. Pastor's family under investigation. Screens outside cafes replayed the footage in looping silence. The rain, the trembling voice, the single line that had ended our reputation. "Let her freeze," Every news anchor spoke the words with the kind of awe usually reserved for miracles or disasters. I sat by the window of my apartment, coffee growing cold in my hands, watching the city below come alive. Danielle Harris was on the phone with Channel 9, confirming the details for an exclusive interview. "We'll focus on systemic abuse in religious families," she said. "No sensationalism, truth with compassion." She caught my glance and smiled. "They want you to join the segment tomorrow." I shook my head. "Not yet." My voice was calm, but my chest felt hollow. This story stopped belonging to me the moment it went public. On the couch, Helena held the twins close. Their small fingers reached for the light filtering through the blinds. "They don't know what happened," she whispered. "They just know it's quiet again." I looked at her, exhausted but steady. "That's enough," I said. "Peace is more than we ever had in that house." She nodded, eyes wet. "Cleo, I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," I said softly. "You believed me when no one else did. That's what saved me." The doorbell rang. Danielle answered. A courier stood outside with an envelope. Inside was a typed statement from Langford and Associates. "Marcus Miller Jr. has been placed on indefinite suspension pending criminal review. The firm upholds zero tolerance for harassment or ethical breaches." Below that, a second sheet, a legal notice from the Washington Philanthropic Council announcing an audit of the Miller Family Foundation. Danielle smiled thinly. "It's all falling into place." "Or apart," I said. She shrugged. "Sometimes that's the same thing." Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. It was Eleanor. For a moment, I considered letting it ring, the way she once had, but I answered. Her voice was small, stripped of control. "Cleo, they're saying we could lose everything. The board wants Richard to resign. Marcus might face charges." "I know," I said quietly. "You could help us," she said. "Say the video was edited. Say it was anger, not cruelty." I closed my eyes. "It was both," I said. "And you chose it." Silence stretched, then softer. "Do you hate me?" "No," I said. "I just don't believe you anymore." She cried quietly before hanging up. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. I just felt free. That night, as the sun sank behind the sound, Helena joined me on the balcony. The air smelled of rain and sea salt. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe this is the part where we stop surviving and start living." She smiled faintly. "Mom used to say storms wash everything clean." "Then maybe," I said, "this was the one we needed." Down below, the city lights blinked on, 1,000 small redemptions flickering against the dusk. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like running or hiding. I felt still, and somewhere deep inside, beneath the wreckage of the Miller name, something fragile began to grow. Not revenge, not victory, but peace. 3 weeks later, the city had moved on. But I hadn't. The news cycle had devoured the Miller scandal and spat it out for the next headline, but the echo still lingered in every corner of my apartment. The quiet wasn't empty. It was heavy, like air after rain. Every morning I woke up expecting to hear my phone explode with messages, but it didn't. No threats, no guilt, just silence. And somehow, that was harder to get used to than the chaos. Helena had started a new remote position at Nova Edge Solutions, thanks to Danielle's connections. I watched her set up a small desk by the window, the twins babbling on the rug nearby, sunlight spilling across their toys. "It's strange," she said one morning, adjusting her headset. "For the first time, I'm working without fear." "That's what it's supposed to feel like," I said. "Freedom isn't loud, it's just steady." She smiled softly. "You sound like Grandma Eleanor used to." I froze for a moment. She didn't mean our Eleanor, but our grandmother, the one who'd believed kindness was strength, not weakness. "Maybe I'm finally listening to her," I said. Danielle stopped by most afternoons, coffee in one hand, case files in the other. The foundation audit's complete, she told me one day. They found diversion of funds, about $150,000 unaccounted for. Your father will face charges, but he's cooperating. He's tired. Tired or sorry? I asked. Maybe both, she said. Sometimes that's as close to redemption as people get. That night, I sat on the balcony again. The city hummed below, alive and indifferent. Helena joined me, holding Hazel while Ivy slept inside. Do you ever regret it? She asked. I thought about the ballroom, the lights, my mother's voice breaking on my name. No, I said finally. You can't regret saving yourself. Helena nodded, tears catching in the light. Then what happens next? I looked at her, and the baby in her arms, and felt something shift. We start again, I said. But this time, we build something that lasts. The days that followed blurred into quiet routines. Morning coffee, baby laughter, emails from Danielle filled with court updates. The noise that had once defined our lives was gone, replaced by the steady rhythm of healing. Yet beneath that calm, a question kept tugging at me. What do we build from the ruins? One gray Thursday morning, the answer arrived. Not as an idea, but as a letter. Danielle dropped it on my table, next to the coffee and the stack of legal updates. The envelope was pale blue, embossed with the seal of the Washington Community Renewal Fund. Inside, a single page. Approved. Matching grant, $500,000. At the bottom, my name, Cleopatra Miller, founder and chairwoman of a new nonprofit. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. This is real, Danielle said softly. We can build it now. That afternoon, we sat around my small dining table, me, Danielle, and Helena, scribbling ideas on yellow pads. It should carry their names, Helena said, her voice steady but full, not as ghosts, but as reminders of why we're doing this. The Helena and Hazel Foundation, Danielle said aloud, testing the rhythm. It sounds like hope, and we decided its mission in one sentence: to provide shelter, education, and legal aid for single mothers and children abandoned in crisis. Danielle added, we'll start local, one women's shelter in Tacoma, one legal clinic in Seattle. We'll expand when the system catches up. Over the next weeks, my apartment became headquarters again. But this time, the chaos was beautiful. Boxes of supplies stacked against the wall, grant documents spread across the floor, Helena balancing a baby in one arm while designing a logo with the other. I learned to write grant proposals, to negotiate vendor contracts, to stretch donations into something that resembled miracles. There was no power here, no hierarchy, only purpose. Word spread faster than we expected. Former employees of my father's foundation reached out anonymously, offering to volunteer. We knew what they were doing with the money, one wrote. We just didn't know how to stop it. Teachers, nurses, single parents, people who had watched our family from afar, began showing up with boxes of toys, clothes, and notebooks. One note, tucked into a donation envelope, read, "Thank you for reminding us that truth can build what lies destroyed." The first night the shelter opened, we stayed until midnight assembling furniture. The building smelled of fresh paint and lavender. Helena hung photos of Hazel and Ivy above the playroom wall. I want them to know this started because they existed, she said. I watched the twins toddle across the floor, chasing the light that spilled through the windows, and thought, this was the opposite of everything the Miller name once stood for. This wasn't legacy built on image. This was legacy built on healing. Reporters reached out again, this time not for scandal but for story. From scandal to service, the Miller sisters' redemption. I declined most interviews, except one for the Seattle Tribune. The journalist, a quiet woman with kind eyes, asked, if you could say one thing to your parents now, what would it be? I thought for a long moment. That I forgive them, I said. But forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering without letting the pain own you. The article went viral, not because it was dramatic, but because it was gentle. People were tired of outrage. They wanted redemption. Letters began arriving, from women who'd survived abuse, from teachers who'd lost jobs, from daughters still waiting for apologies that would never come. I read every one, replying when I could. Some nights I cried over the weight of it all. Not sadness, just awe at how much pain the world carries quietly. Helena handled the community programs. Danielle built the legal branch. I took care of fundraising and public education. Within 2 months, we'd raised over $1.2 million, enough to secure 2-year operations. Dr. Margot Hayes donated computers, and Nova Edge Solutions sponsored the tech infrastructure. "You turned destruction into design," Margot told me during the launch. "That's rarer than genius." At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, we stood before the new sign, the Helena and Hazel Foundation, where every beginning deserves shelter. The sky above Tacoma was silver with clouds, but the air felt warm. Helena whispered, "Do you think Mom will ever see this?" "I think she already has," I said quietly. "In her own way." We didn't invite my parents to the opening, but I knew they'd seen the news. A week later, an anonymous envelope arrived. No note, just a check for $10,000, signed in a shaky hand. E. Miller. I didn't cash it. Instead, I framed it and hung it in the office hallway, beside a small plaque that read, "Repentance doesn't need to be perfect, just honest." That evening, after the guests left and the lights dimmed, I stood alone in the new office. The room smelled of coffee, ink, and new beginnings. Through the window I could see the neon sign glowing softly against the dark. Helena and Hazel. It wasn't revenge that had brought me here. It was love. Stubborn, surviving, unbreakable. For the first time in my life, I wasn't a Miller trying to prove anything. I was simply Cleopatra, a woman who had finally learned that healing isn't weakness. It's the quiet revolution that saves everything. Autumn arrived quietly, as if the city itself wanted to rest. Leaves drifted down Tacoma's streets like slow-moving embers, and the windows of the Helena and Hazel Foundation glowed warm against the gray. 3 months had passed since the opening, and the shelter was full. Mothers, children, stories that echoed our own. Every Friday, I volunteered at the front desk, greeting each woman by name, reminding them they weren't invisible. One afternoon, the mail carrier handed me a pale envelope. My name was written in the delicate cursive I knew too well. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a short letter from Eleanor Miller. "Cleopatra, I've watched what you've built. It's beautiful. I used to think power made us strong. But maybe it was love, and I was too afraid to believe in it. I can't undo what I did. But I see you now. I see all of you. Love, Mom." For a long time, I stood there reading it again and again. The handwriting trembled near the end, as if she'd written it through tears. I didn't know if it was forgiveness, apology, or surrender, but I didn't need to define it. It was enough that she'd finally seen me. A week later, Danielle sent me a news clip. Former Foundation Director Richard Miller resigns amid federal audit. The camera caught him leaving the courthouse, shoulders bent under rain, face drawn and pale. Reporters shouted questions, but he didn't answer. He simply raised a trembling hand to block the flash. Behind him, Marcus followed, no longer the golden sun, his tie undone, wedding ring gone, eyes hollow with something that looked like regret. Watching them, I felt a strange ache. It wasn't triumph. It was grief. The quiet kind that comes when justice arrives too late to save anyone. Because punishment had found them, but peace still hadn't. That evening, Helena and I held a small candlelight vigil in the courtyard, not for our parents, but for everyone who'd been silenced by family, faith, or fear. Dozens of women came, holding candles that flickered like small promises. Danielle read a few lines from her favorite poem. "When we choose truth, we choose light, and the light will always find its way home." When it was my turn to speak, I didn't prepare anything. I just looked at the crowd, faces tired but shining, and said, "We are proof that survival isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning." The wind shifted, scattering the candlelight across their faces like constellations. For the first time, I realized I no longer needed to win or prove. I had already become everything I once needed. Later that night, I placed my mother's letter in a glass box beside the framed check, two imperfect symbols of what remained, remorse and hope. Together, they told the truth better than any headline ever could. I turned off the lights, stepped outside, and looked up at the night sky. The sign of Helena and Hazel glowed faintly in the reflection of the street lamps, steady, golden, alive. The air smelled of rain and renewal. And as I walked home, I whispered into the cool night, not in anger or sorrow, but in peace. I forgive you. I forgive us all. And if this story touched you, if you still believe that compassion can live inside justice, leave A in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next story in the Family Ravager series.